FoxT ServerControl provides centralized administration and automated enforcement of granular access policies, including multi-factor authentication and authorization across Windows, Unix, Linux servers, both physical and virtual. In addition, the solution automatically consolidates user activity logs and settings from across these disparate servers to streamline audit and compliance reporting. In this short video, we'll take a look at how FoxT ServerControl integrates with Oracle Identity Manager using the OIM connector developed by Fox Technologies. And we'll look at some examples of how, for example, user accounts can be provisioned into the FoxT environment.
Alright, so we're going to start off by logging into the Identity Manager. And once we've logged in, we'll go over and we'll create a user account that is for a user of the Identity Manager itself. So we'll create a user named Anne. Fill in some of the basic information. This would be her password to log into the Identity Manager if there was a user self-service front end or something like that. So we'll create the account within the Identity Manager. And then the next thing we do is we provision a resource. And we'll fill out the information. Select domain 1. We'll put her in maybe the HR host group. Type in her username. This will be the username that appears on the target host. Make it a Unix host this time around. Specify the home directory. And tell it to create the home directory. We don't need a distinguished name. Give her a real name. Password for the Unix host. Select our user class, HR again. We need to specify how long the account's valid for. We'll make it a year. Assign a Unix group. And maybe how long the password will last. And we'll look and see and make sure we've got everything filled in. And we'll continue from there. If we wanted to add any secondary user classes, we would do it here. We'll skip that. Want to add an authenticator, we can do it here. Maybe go in and add a secure ID authenticator. And click add there. See it's been added. And move on from there. If we wanted to add any secondary Unix groups, we could do it here. This isn't a Windows account, so we won't worry about any Windows groups here. This is our summary screen. We'll just check over all the values and continue. Okay, and the resource should have been provisioned. So we'll go out to our master and we'll look for the user, and we can see that the user account has been created. We can see that the user is not blocked, but if we wanted to act on that user account and maybe block their access, we can disable it. If we go and we look again at the user's profile, we can see that it is now shows up as being manually blocked. And in the same fashion, we can go and enable the account again, which is effectively going to unblock it. We'll go out and look again, and you can see that it's no longer blocked. And if we no longer wanted this user to have a Unix account, then we can simply revoke the resource that's been provisioned, and that will remove the user from the box master. You can see that the user no longer exists. We can do roughly the same thing in the Windows space. If we look at our Windows user list here, on our Windows server, you'll see that the user "and" does not exist. So we can go and we'll provision a new resource. We'll fill out pretty much the same information as we did earlier. The host group we'll choose will be a little bit different. We'll choose a Windows host group this time. And a Windows local account type. On this particular form, we still have to fill out certain values that may not be relevant for Windows, but the connector doesn't differentiate between them, and if they're not filled out, the actual provision will fail. So we still have to fill out pretty much all the same type of information as we did for the Unix account. The biggest difference here being that we specified a Windows local account instead of a Unix account. So we fill out all our values, kind of look them over, and then we'll continue from there. We won't worry about any secondary classes. We've already seen the authenticator piece work, we won't worry about that. No Unix groups necessary. So for the Windows groups, we'll go ahead and add a couple here. Maybe Anne's a power user, so we can add that one. And maybe we want her to have remote desktop capabilities, so we'll add her to the remote desktop group. And go from there. We can kind of review everything we've chosen again. And when we're sure, we can continue from there. Okay, we go back and look at her profile. You'll now see that she's got the new provisioned resource. If we look at the master, you'll see that she has a new account and that it is a Windows account. You can see that she's been added to the Windows groups as we selected. And if you look on the Windows server, you now see that the user exists. Just like we did on the Unix side, if we don't want the user to have access anymore, or we want that account removed, we can simply revoke it. And you can see that they've been revoked. You look back on the master, and you see that her account no longer exists. And if we go and look at our Windows host and refresh the list of users, you'll see that the user is no longer present on that server as well. So the other thing that we can show is how data is pulled from the box master into the identity manager. Let's say we go onto the master here and we create a new host group called DBA hosts. If we want that to show up in the identity manager, then we go to manage our resources. We'll go through and look for stuff that's specific to the box environment. When there's the data lookup job, and basically when you run this, it goes out to box, pulls information from the box database, populates the database behind the identity manager so that you can use it in the drop down, the search fields and things like that. If we look at Michael, for example, here, he still has an active account. We'll go and look at that account. If we wanted to change his host group, for example, we can go and we'll open up the selection window, and now you'll see that the DBA host group appears in that list. It wasn't there before. And that works the same for Unix groups, user classes, and host groups. Okay, and that's pretty much all we have for today.